people to slip onto the streets. And every day, that slide feels steeper. Step off the bright stretch of Times Square, and the change hits like a punch. Behind Hudson Yards and along West 39th, cardboard huts crowd the alleys, turning the city that once promised golden chances into a nightmare maze. A former warehouse worker summed up the despair. They leave you out here, you're stuck, and you can't get back up. The minute someone sinks to the pavement, eyes that once raced past now glare like they're seeing a threat. The Statue of Liberty still raises her torch, yet its beam no longer reaches every block. Beyond the tourist glow, trash piles beside tents, and the smell of stale urine hovers over forgotten bridges. But what happened next was even more shocking. The Coalition for the Homeless counted more than 350,000 New Yorkers without steady shelter at the start of this year. On any given night, 132,000 squeeze into jam-packed shelters, while thousands more wrestle over subway benches. That flood grows stronger by the week. Elderly men and women once praised for building this very skyline now line up for soup, praying rain clouds hold off just a little longer. From Brooklyn to Manhattan, tattered tarps bloom like weeds after spring rain. Sidewalks that once sparkled now host misery the city never dreamed it would tolerate. Even Central Park and Broadway cannot escape the gloom. Crowds that once cheered musicals now dodge clusters of sleeping bags outside stage doors. How can an economy the size of a small nation let this keep happening? If the American dream begins in New York, why does it now stall here in endless dusk? Manhattan, the heart of U.S. finance, should be untouchable. Wall Street moves trillions every dawn. Yet only a few blocks away, the desperate battle for dry cardboard. Walk 10 meters near Penn Station, and you will spot at least one person curled against a wall, shivering even in summer heat. West 39th between 9th and 10th has turned into a sea of nylon and plastic, each tent telling a fresh tale of lost jobs, medical debt, or sudden eviction. Night brings an even harsher sight. Billboard glare fades, leaving whole avenues in deep shadow where tension crackles like a live wire ready to snap. Old parking lots become hidden camps where frightened seniors clutch flimsy blankets. Dark tunnels under riverside highways echo with coughing and muted sobs, creating scenes that feel ripped from a disaster film. Yet the crowds keep flowing into Manhattan every morning, barely noticing the crisis unfolding under their feet. Tourists grab selfies while only meters away a veteran wraps himself tighter to fight the chill. City leaders announce plan after plan, but each promise melts in the heat of rising rents. One-bedroom apartments now demand salaries that many full-time workers can only dream about. But the most chilling detail is the speed of the collapse. In just a handful of years, the number of people sleeping rough has surged past levels that once felt impossible. Elderly women who once rang up groceries now guard their purse under a bridge. Retired bus drivers who carried millions across boroughs crawl into tents erected on the very streets they once served with pride. Every new week adds another row of blue tarps beside freeway ramps. Community groups race to pass out meals, while supplies vanish faster than they arrive. Violence simmers inside the packed shelters. Arguments erupt over each blanket, every outlet to charge an old phone, any tiny scrap of privacy that still exists. Police patrols circle the blocks, yet officers admit the problem is far larger than their reach. They can move a camp today, but by dawn the tents return, driven by rents that refuse to fall. The torch on Liberty Island keeps shining, but its promise now feels distant. If a powerhouse like New York cannot protect its own, what hope remains for smaller cities already stretched thin? The crisis rattles the idea that hard work always pays off. When lifelong taxpayers share benches with teens who just aged out of foster care, fear spreads that anyone could be next. Yet in this storm of hardship, some refuse to surrender. Volunteer doctors set up mobile clinics in forgotten lots, while faith groups haul vats of soup to frozen sidewalks. Still, one hard truth hangs in the air like thick fog. Until housing costs drop and wages rise together, the tents will keep multiplying. So New York stands at crossroads, its brightest avenues rubbing edges with its darkest alleyways. One path leads to revival, the other to a reality even grimmer than today's relentless flood of need. Chaos hangs over this stretch of Manhattan like a black cloud ready to burst. The danger has grown so fierce that even seasoned officers keep their distance. One officer admitted, "We have stopped patrolling that street regularly." Walking these alleys feels like stepping into a real-life survival game, where every shadow could strike. If sworn protectors hesitate, what chance does anyone else have? City leaders know the answer is not a quick fix. Housing support, job programs, mental health care, and daily basics for hundreds of thousands cost mountains of cash and careful planning. New York pushes forward block by block, center by center, hoping to turn the tide that keeps sweeping the vulnerable into the gutter. But what happens when the world's richest zip code cannot even promise a pillow? Sticker shock hits hardest at sunrise. A basic breakfast can smash $20. A dozen eggs cost $9. Milk is twice the pre-pandemic price. And bread sometimes eats an entire hour of minimum wage work. Fresh figures from Bloomberg and Numbo show New York now outpaces San Francisco and Los Angeles as the priciest city in the nation. Food bills have soared 75 to 90% in only a few years, while Social Security checks crawled up less than 25%. Many retirees face monthly tabs of $1,200 to $1,500 for food, medicine, and bus fare before rent enters the picture. Living here feels like paying a tax for nostalgia, a charge on memories of better days. Yet food is just the first punch. Housing prices deliver the knockout. A single bedroom in Manhattan now blasts past $4,000 a month. The federal rule says no one should spend beyond 30% of income on rent. Yet more than 40% of New Yorkers hand over half or more just to keep a roof. Even worse, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition counts only 36 affordable units for every 100 low-income families. That leaves more than 70 households scrambling or slipping onto sidewalks every night. How can an elder survive on a pension under $1,800 in a city stretched to the breaking point? The painful truth is many cannot. Tragedy does not spare the young. Thousands of children grow up without a real home, learning to queue at charity food lines instead of playgrounds. They master survival skills before spelling their names. Cold benches and dim streetlights shape their dreams while passers-by glance away. The crisis no longer targets only the poor. It stalks the working class, and even those once called middle class. One missed paycheck, one hospital bill, and the gap between bed and pavement vanishes. Numbers betray the builders of this metropolis. They erected skyscrapers, yet now hunt for empty doorways when night falls. If this does not scream emergency, what will? New York once lured dreamers, chasing bright futures. Now the weight of that dream crushes the streets below. In uncertain times, migrants pour in, clutching hope for safety and fresh starts. Arrivals come from Venezuela, Haiti, Canada, the Middle East, and many U.S. states looking for a second chance. The Statue of Liberty still lifts her torch, but the welcome mat now sags under record demand. City records show more than 175,000 migrants and refugees reached New York in the last 2 years alone. The helping network was already strained and is now near collapse. Tents fill school gyms, hotel lobbies become dorms, and a nightly lottery decides who sleeps on a cot and who beds down on concrete. Officials scramble, burning more than $2 billion in less than 12 months on shelter, meals, and urgent care. But the issue has outgrown money. It now tests the endurance of a city stretched to its final inch. Each dawn brings harder choices. Will the budget fund classrooms or emergency beds? Will tax dollars repair subways or pay for extra soup kitchens? The strain seeps into every borough. Residents argue at town halls. Landlords raise rents yet again. And shop owners watch sales dip as fear keeps tourists away. Still, some refuse to surrender. Neighborhood groups gather donations. Churches open basements for families. And volunteer doctors stage pop-up clinics under bypasses. Yet goodwill cannot outpace the avalanche. Costs tower while wages freeze, and the line between housed and homeless shrinks to a handful of dollars. New York stands at crossroads. One path leads to bold reform, the other deeper into despair. If the city famous for making dreams come true fails, what lesson will the rest of the country learn? The promised land slams its gates shut for countless newcomers. Fresh arrivals soon learn that missing papers mean no steady job, no benefits, and nowhere safe to sleep. Most squeeze into cheap hotels or flimsy tents that flap along crowded sidewalks. Shelters have been packed for years, so within weeks many end up on the curb, unseen and unprotected. From that moment, a silent rift widens. Longtime residents fear newcomers are grabbing scarce housing and limited aid, while newcomers feel loathed and left behind by the city that once swore to welcome all. As rent rises the weakest are first to be shoved aside, sparking the grim question, does the nation still honor its humanitarian vow, or has the dream curdled into a nightmare right where it began? Years ago, the middle class stood tall as America's backbone. 2 jobs, paid taxes, a tiny yard, weekend groceries, and kids headed for college sounded rock solid. Now, those pillars sink inch by inch beneath New York's crushing costs. Even a full 40-hour week plus a degree cannot guarantee a roof. With 1-bedroom rents bursting past $4,000 a month, a family with 2 kids needs $8,000 to $10,000 after taxes just to tread water. One cut shift, one surprise bill, and an ordinary family can spiral toward disaster in days. Pew numbers reveal the U.S. middle class shrank nearly 11% in 20 years, and New York's decline races even faster. Former homeowners now rent cramped rooms or squeeze into rundown walk-ups. Some sleep in cars, yet still clock in at midtown offices every dawn. That shrinking buffer between wealth and hardship tears society apart. No support, no margin for error, and no second chance spark deep danger when the hardest workers get shoved to the fringe. Opportunity here and now comes wrapped in a price tag too heavy to lift. What once felt like a chance now feels like a privilege the average earner cannot keep. Every day you may pass them without a glance. They are not gone, only invisible inside a city running low on compassion. Meet Lydia, 78. Homeless more than 40 years. She once held a rent-controlled place, but when the leaseholder moved, eviction crushed her life. Her bid for Social Security stalled in piles of paperwork and silence. Well, no matter where I live, I'm a square peg and this is a round wall. So, no matter where I live, I don't fit, she says with weary resolve. New York and the wider nation offer her no welcome. Dreams faded long ago. Survival is the only goal she trusts. Then there is Lisa, still a teenager, yet already struggling to stay safe. Fights with foster parents forced her onto the street, where she sleeps near a church gate to dodge the night's dangers. Asked about her wish, Lisa says, I was off the street. I would that I was off the street and had my own place to stay. People were all kind to each other, and that there was no war. Such gentle hopes slice straight to the heart amid this storm of hardship. Lisa clings to kindness, even with empty hands, proving the purest faith often survives in those who own nothing else. Her bright spirit reminds us that injustice cuts deepest when innocence endures it. Richard used to have it all: a steady job, a family, a life with purpose. But when his wife fell seriously ill, everything collapsed. He lost his home, his stability, and, eventually, his place in society. He tried to enter a shelter, but the conditions were so awful, he couldn't bring himself to stay. Now, all he wants is 2 weeks of peace, just long enough to get clean, find work, and stand on his feet again. A safe place to sleep, a working shower, somewhere to store his things. But the city won't give him even that. Sorry, I don't have a power, Richard says. I'm not a deadbeat, you know. I just couldn't do it. And now they leave you out here, and you're stuck, and you can't get up and they won't get you up. He continues, as soon as you sit down on the ground, they look at you different. One of his bar patrons even sat beside him once and said, people look at you different when you sit down here. Richard replied, yeah, I'm telling you. Sorry, bro. But the hardest thing for Richard isn't hunger or cold. It's the way people look right through him, as if he's not even human. And so he fades into the shadows under bridges, along alley curbs, finding the few spots where no one notices. The tragic part? People like Richard, Lydia, and Lisa are no longer rare cases. Homelessness has stopped being a distant issue. Now it could happen to anyone, after a hospital bill, a lost job, or a family tragedy. When our former co-workers, classmates, and neighbors vanish into the streets. The question isn't where they went. It's how we let it happen without even seeing it. When the heart of America begins to slow down, can the rest of the system survive? New York isn't just a city. It's a symbol. Once the birthplace of dreams, now turning into a place where dreams quietly die. Step out of the subway in Midtown. Look past the luxury towers, and you'll see someone curled up against a cold exit door. Inequality isn't just buried in data anymore. It's right there, raw, visible, and painful. What kind of future awaits New York when the most dedicated workers are being forced out? Elderly people who can't keep up with the city's pace. Workers juggling 2 jobs but still falling short on rent. Immigrants who arrive full of hope only to land on waiting lists with no end. Children who are born without even a room to call their own. Can we call a city successful when its success only exists high above the ground, on a few penthouse floors? When parks turn into shelters, subway stations become people's last stops, and sidewalks serve as bedrooms. What is New York leading in exactly? Officials speak in budgets. Programs are announced. But when hundreds of thousands still sleep outside, when the eyes of homeless children blur into the morning traffic, this is no longer about money. It's about conscience. New York once stood tall as a city of opportunity for everyone, no matter where they came from. But now, if the poor, the elderly, and those who spent decades helping build this city no longer have a place here, what does that say about America's future? You can't see everything from the top of a skyscraper. You won't notice the man shivering in a rain-soaked jacket below. You won't hear the quiet sigh of a senior choosing between dinner and their medicine. You won't feel the stiff, rushed sleep of a child curled up on a public bench. But that doesn't mean they're not there. They are, in plain sight, just beneath the lights and glass and dreams labeled the future. Maybe the American dream still lives in this city, but not for everyone. Not for the people who gave everything and still came up short. No matter how hard they work or how much they sacrifice, they can no longer reach it. This video isn't here to stir drama or blame. It's a reflection, a mirror pointed at the corner of society most people avoid. But the parts we ignore are sometimes the parts that need us the most. What do you think about the homelessness crisis in New York? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this video opened your eyes, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and see more stories like this. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Note, all the information in this video was gathered from public and trusted sources for analysis and educational purposes. This is not financial or legal advice. Always research further before making decisions.